This is a More Complete Beast podcast where we discover and distill strategies to drive the needle forward on your life. Today, we're sitting across from Chris Ellson, who's a real estate agent, real estate investor, and gym owner. So he's basically like a taller version of me, or maybe I'm a shorter version of him. You absolutely will learn something in this podcast, I promise you. So do me a favor, leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this podcast. We hit 1,500 downloads on our last podcast, but we only have like 20-something 5-star reviews. Leave us a 5-star review, share this podcast. Now let's get into it. Well, dude, the scary thing is that most Americans can't like front a $400 payment without going into credit card
I've read
debt.
that one. Maybe you posted that or something, but
Scary.
Man, and I watch a couple financial guys online and they talk to like kids in Austin, Texas and like whatever. And they're like, they spend more money than they make on credit cards.
Yeah.
And it's all Uber Eats.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
I'm like, you guys don't realize, like you make $2,000 a month and you put things on your credit cards and you don't even pay the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
But they can keep racking it up. Like each credit card can last them a year.
Yeah.
Just eating food and stuff.
There's a guy that he has a vending machine company. Him and I were talking yesterday because I was at work late. Mm-hmm. He comes in, he fills up the vending machine and he's like, yeah, I called up Discover because I wanted to extend our credit because he's like, we're carrying more inventory. Our business is growing. I called up Discover and I was like, hey, I want to increase my limit from 10,000 to 15,000. And they were like, we're not doing that. We're doing a stay on everybody's credit card.
Because the utilization is too high right now.
It's too high.
It's the highest in the world. Or highest that it's ever been.
It's wild. And that has to come to an end at some point. You'd think.
Well, people will just start filing bankruptcy.
Yeah, filing bankruptcy, or you might have the federal government just come bail you out. They did it for all the companies, right?
People don't pay it back.
Yeah.
I would say the majority of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can consolidate it, go into bankruptcy. I don't know the answer to it. I do think that I'm not going to say this is going to solve it because I think getting rich or having money is a temperament thing. It's a knowledge thing to an extent, but then after that, it's a temperament thing. For sure. Like everybody knows if you spend more than you make, you will eventually go broke.
Right.
That is the bare bones economics that I think everybody understands. But having the temperament and the discipline to be like, oh, wait, I'm not going to buy this because it's set me back here. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you change that.
That comes with age too.
Yeah.
Like, when you buy things when you're younger, you're really emotional about them. Nowadays, like I'll look at something and I just put it in my cart and then I'll just walk away.
Yep.
And then I won't end up buying it.
Yeah. You got to think about it.
That's not.
Dude, I do it all the time on Amazon.
That's with age.
Mm-hmm.
That comes with wisdom too. And you see how hard you work for money. It's like, you're not just willing to give it up as easy now.
Dude, I put stuff in my Amazon cart that'll sit there for 3 months. And it won't even be expensive.
Yeah.
It'd be like a $30 item and I'll look at it and I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to save this for later. Yeah. It's like, I'm not saying I'm not a rich guy. I'm not. But I could buy a $30 item.
Oh, for sure.
But I'll think about it
until
I'm really sure I need that item and then I buy it. So I don't know. I mean, I hate when you get more regulation involved in anything. I actually hate it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you can get a credit card at 18, like you're set, unless you have that temperament and wisdom built up somehow, mentorship, I don't know what it is, you could be setting yourself up for something very bad down the road.
For sure.
I mean, at 18, I'm thinking about how I was at 18, even at 23 when I started my business. My temperament has changed. My patience has changed.
And your discipline has changed.
Yeah.
Maybe we should save this for a podcast.
Yeah. You want to hear something funny?
What?
We're already recording.
Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think discipline definitely changes as you get older. And then there's two camps to the money thing that I've kind of viewed as like, one being you can be really good at budgeting or you can be really good at making money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you spend a lot or have that habit of spending, it's like you need to be good at making too.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the discipline, a budget can come into play on the other side. A mix of both is probably the best.
Definitely. There was that, I forget where I read this or heard this. It was some individual that worked at UPS for like 40 years and never made a ton of money. But by the time they died, the inheritance, they had millions of dollars,
Mhm.
millions of dollars in assets. And it's because they were very disciplined over a long period of time,
Yeah.
just inching their way forward until eventually they were rich.
Right.
They were rich. They were working at UPS. And I know when I worked at UPS, I started off, I think at like $10 an hour. That was like the worst job I ever had. That's a side note. But I started off at $10 an hour. You get guaranteed raises. So if you were there for 40 years, they were probably doing pretty well at the end. But at the same time, like if you're spending, if you let's say you get a raise and then your liabilities butt up right against it, raise liabilities, you'll never get ahead.
No. And that's probably the thing I see the most. And my dad always calls it the millionaire next door.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like somebody who does that. If you can fix your expenses and you know what you're going to make and you kind of plan out, like the math is pretty simple. If you want to stay at a job, no one stays at a job and keeps it consistent throughout their whole life anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we jump jobs every so often, which I've read statistics that's you actually make more money by changing jobs every 3 years in the corporate world.
Yeah.
But for somebody like that, he probably fixed his expenses and then just kept his income. It kept climbing. He was smart with his money. And by the end, it kind of just snowballs into, you know, having money when he goes to retire. And I've seen a ton of people do that through real estate. It's like they've got an okay job, pays them well, but they're really good with just managing their money and what they spend on and not living over their means. That was the first piece of advice the CEO at my company when I got out of college told me. Live below your means for as long as possible. You know, he was driving I think he had like a Maybach or some high-end Mercedes.
Yeah.
And he drove me home one day and he said, I drove a Honda Civic for years, like 10 years, he said. And, you know, he was the CEO of that company now. But he said, live below your means as long as possible. I took that to heart. I've always tried to live well below my means and that will help you as well.
And then you're involved in real estate. It's a heavy piece of what we're going to talk about here.
Yeah.
What kind of inspired you to get involved in real estate initially?
So I'll give you the long form of everything, I guess, since we're sitting here.
Yep. We got all the time in the world, man.
So I talked, you know, I know when you sent me the notes for this, I put a post up last week about kind of my story on how I got involved in real estate. I'll try to keep that piece a little bit shorter because people can read it on my Facebook page. And I remember my dad had, I think, 2 houses, which had a couple units in each, right? And he lived in Egypt half the year because he was a pilot. So he lived out there 6 months of the year, and then he was home 6 months of the year.
Cool.
My parents are still together. But that was his traveling. You know, he worked for some oil king out there. A pretty cool job. But when he was away, I would manage the properties, right? So I would go over and cut the grass, pick up rents if we needed to, and do whatever else was needed. And I enjoyed doing that. Like I enjoyed cutting the grass. It gave me something to do during the summers. I may have even had a job doing something else. But I specifically remember the day that I knew I was interested in real estate. Maybe it was one of the first times I grabbed rent from some of the tenants. Was sitting at a light. I specifically remember which light. It was in Tarentum, right across the Tarentum Bridge next to Gatto Cycle. I was in my dad's car. I had all the windows down. The moonroof was open and the music was playing. The wind was like kind of breezing in. The sun was like beating right into the sunroof. It was just a nice day. And I had freedom. I felt what freedom kind of felt like. I didn't have a boss to answer to. Like my dad, I just talked to him. He was my dad. You know what I mean? He wasn't like, he's like, hey, can you go do this for me? So it wasn't like a boss relationship with my dad. And I had no one else telling me what to do. And I was picking up money. I had $1,600, let's say, cash in my hands. And I remember looking down at it and I was just like, if I could do this every day, that'd be great.
Definitely.
Right? Because I had nowhere to be. I had no one like, you know, calling me, telling me I had to do this or run this errand or be at work at a certain time. Because I was, 16 or 17 years old. So it didn't really matter. I also didn't have much responsibility. So that helped the case as well.
Definitely.
But I just vividly remember that point in time in my life. And I think I always wanted to be a gym teacher. I mean, we share that in common.
Definitely.
Gym teacher or something within the fitness. You know, I played multiple sports. I swam in college. And so athletics was always something I was interested in. I also had that motivation of being really skinny in high school and never really filling out my body because it just took so long. I was always growing. I'm 6'6". So, I didn't stop growing until I was 28. So I never felt like I could pack on muscle or look the way that some of the other, my peers looked in high school because they were shorter, stopped growing a little bit, or just were, they were built differently. So I always had that in the back of my mind. So that's what kind of drove me to, I want to lift, I want to be strong, and I like being athletic. So that was that side. That was in my head already. And then that day for real estate, that's kind of what sparked me. And I put those two things together and said, I want to be a gym teacher and I want to own real estate. I can do that in the summers and manage it, after school and stuff like that. I didn't think too detailed into it after that kind of like initial generalization of what I wanted to do. But yeah, that's kind of where my story started for getting interested in real estate. And then, from there, there's another story as well,
So for people that are listening, which is most of the listeners,
yeah,
you're very fit now. So
Thank
mission
you.
accomplished.
All right, perfect.
Took some time, but it paid off.
Yeah, I finally stopped growing. That helped a little bit. I
thought you looked taller since the last time I saw you. I had to remark. I thought you were taller.
I'm still tall and lean or thin, I guess.
Fit, dude,
I'm not
fit,
skinny anymore, which is great. And, obviously my knowledge has grown on why muscle and lean mass is important to have on. So for health reasons, like I want to continue to be fit and keep muscle on my body over performance nowadays, I guess.
We're going to focus a lot on real estate here, but I also want to talk and dovetail a little bit, or at least segue off a little bit into the gym teacher thing.
Yeah.
So you didn't become a gym teacher per se,
right?
But you are in the fitness space. Tell us a little bit about that.
So after college, I went into finance after I graduated, and that just wasn't for me. I think I was there maybe 9 months, and it was like cold calling, wearing a suit every day. I just never got the momentum. I was still irresponsible from college. So coming out of college, like I still lived like a college kid. I was still partying, going out. Like the responsibility still hadn't hit me yet on life, right? So finance didn't interest me. I quit that. I asked my dad, I was like, hey, I'm thinking about stepping down from this position. He's like, my only advice is just don't not have a job. Go get another job or start interviewing for jobs before you quit a job. Sound advice for anybody. And so I did that. I was working out at the gym and, made friends with the trainers that were there, the Anytime Fitness, back when they were down and right next to McDonald's. So I was working out there and I went up to the guy that owned it. And I was just like, hey, will you give me a job if I get my certification? He was like, yeah, sure. And they were getting paid okay. It was actually equivalent or maybe even a little bit better personal training than what I was making right out of college. So it wasn't even just a lateral move. It might have been a little uptick going to that route. And then I had more freedom with my schedule and stuff. And I figured it would be for like a year. I'd do it for a year and continue to look for jobs with my resume and stuff like that. Like just go into a different aspect of business, whether it be management or finance or whatever. So I started working there and spent maybe 2 years doing that. And then one of my clients approached me, and I had always told people like, I don't want to own my own gym. Like it doesn't interest me. The guy I worked for, he was kind of an asshole. And
I've heard.
Yeah, if you know who it is.
Yep.
He kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. Nice at some points, but some of the things he would say, I was just like, I wouldn't treat people like that. But I have no interest in owning a gym. One of my clients approached me, I think before Christmas one year, and was like, hey, do you want to open up a CrossFit gym? And in college in 2008, when I swam, we did CrossFit. No one knew what it was. Like it was a West Coast thing in 2008, CrossFit was. And so I was doing it here for our dry land at college. I went to Clarion University and all of our team was doing it. We got really strong. We had a really good and competitive team, Division II. We were always top in the nation at nationals. Our swimmers were really good. I attribute it to doing CrossFit because it was just hard workouts that I think other teams weren't going through. So no one knew what it was, but I knew what it was. So years later, when my now business partner asked me to open the gym or said, hey, I have a space. Some guys wanted to put a CrossFit gym. And I said, she said, I have the perfect guy. to do that. So she asked me and I said yes, because I knew what that was and kind of brought it to this area. I think we were the first CrossFit
you guys
gym
were the first.
around here, at least. There was some in the city, but so I remember at that time I was putting my resume out and getting ready to transition from training back into the corporate world. And then, I got that, made that connection, and we ended up opening the gym May 2014. Seems like a long time ago. Yeah, it's still around. Yep, 9 years. I think we just cracked 9 years in May. So, yeah, it's been good. But that's how I got into that. I just, it wasn't around here. Somebody brought it up and I was like, I know how to do that. And that interested me more than owning a gym, more like what you have. But, it was always in the back of my mind, like I would love to, be a part of the fitness space. Owning a gym, I was 24 when I did that. So I was just like, this is impossible. Because the guy that owned the gym at Anytime Fitness, he always talked about how much money he owed. Yeah. He had like a couple gyms. He was like millions of dollars in debt. I'm like, I can't even get a credit card. Do you know what I mean? So some of those things seem like impossibilities when you're that young.
There's a couple things I want to highlight. The first one is we talked briefly about discipline, financial discipline. I think to become disciplined is the same way you become strong. You do things strong people, you do things that require strength. To become disciplined, you do things that require discipline.
Yeah.
Sports require discipline.
Yeah.
Being in shape requires discipline. Going to the top of Division II swimming requires discipline. So the reason I asked about the fitness thing, and I kind of knew your story a little bit, is to highlight the fact that over those years, you were cultivating the skill necessary of discipline and the temperament necessary to succeed in real estate, which is very important. Right. I think success in real estate is, again, the same thing in finance. It's a temperament thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is market opportunity. You saw an opportunity there and you jumped on it.
Right.
You were the first to market, blue ocean, and you made it happen, which I think that's going to be a theme we're going to talk about, especially now since the market is so tight.
Yeah.
It's tough to find opportunities, but obviously you're doing it.
Yeah.
I just saw the last flip you guys did.
Thanks.
What I do want to ask about, so you were involved in the gym, started a gym. How did you kind of transition into real estate? So you were doing the gym thing. I think you became an agent, right?
Yeah. Okay. I got to jog my own memory on some of these.
Yeah, we're getting old, dude.
I know. Yeah. Well, hey, we're blessed to be able to do this for as long as we have been,
For sure.
So getting into real estate from owning the gym. So I think we owned the gym maybe, I'm just going to say like 2 years. I didn't really know what hard work was at that point in time, and opened up a business. I mean, obviously, you know how much sweat equity, because I didn't have any money, to be honest. Like,
yeah, so
the
when you
sweat
don't
equity,
have resources, you got to be resourceful, and you just got to work your fucking ass off. That's it.
Regardless, I think you're going to have to work hard, but if you have money, it might make it a little easier.
You have leverage.
You have some more leverage, but if you don't have money, and it's not impossible to do whatever you're dreaming of without money, it's more creative and it takes more sweat equity. So I remember just being exhausted, putting in a lot of work, but it was all worth it. Getting into real estate, it was always in the back of my mind. Like, I knew that was a part of my plan to get into real estate in some aspect. My mother, I remember she sent it to me on Facebook, like Messenger, an ad for a seminar for real estate. Some guys that had like a show on TV were coming in. They're selling something.
Yeah, for sure. They're selling a course.
For sure. They were selling a course. It was a
I've been to them too. So that's why I know.
It was a 3-day. I can't remember who it was, but they were great. I mean, these guys were fantastic. The knowledge that they gave on that weekend as a young person, not knowing much about real estate, seemed like overwhelming. So I was really happy that I went to that. Obviously, I didn't buy any of their courses, but I went to the 3-day course. It was a great experience. Walked away from that knowing even more that, like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Like, I know I'm going to get into real estate. I just need to find out how to get started. They were talking about some high level stuff. They were also talking to people who already owned homes, which I didn't at the time. And leveraging 401ks, which I didn't have, using HELOCs to buy real estate.
Like a house you didn't have.
With a house I didn't have. So I had to really get creative at a young age. And so the way that I started or decided to start my real estate career was just getting my license, because it was obtainable to me. Like it was, I don't know how much it was at the time, but a couple $100. And I took my course, took the test, and then passed and joined a brokerage. And then just started selling. I said, this was a good way for me to get experience, in real estate. So I did that to get started.
The hardest thing, I think, when I first started my training business, I'm sure you can say the same thing, is getting that first customer.
Yeah.
Because you need to show results to get customers, but you need to have customers to show results.
Yeah.
So it's like really hard to break in.
Yeah.
So as a young real estate agent, you were 25, 26 years old. How did you start the ball rolling with that as I'm assuming a seller's agent?
Pressure and risk too. I mean, when you're young, that's when you should be taking risk, I think. Sure. I didn't even understand like the risk that we were kind of taking on. And I'll backtrack just a bit because you made that point. When we opened the gym, we didn't have money for the first month's rent. Like we had enough money to purchase the equipment and get into the rental space that we had. But the first month we had 30 days. Yeah. It was like
you had 30 days.
30 days. And we signed, a 5-year lease. It was a $250,000 lease that we were on the line for. And that just doesn't register when you're that young. And thank God it doesn't, because you're able to take those risks because you have nothing to lose.
Sometimes being a little naive is a superpower.
It is a superpower. And a lot of my experiences as I've gone along, I've been a tiny bit naive, which has pushed me in the right direction. Then you gain the knowledge. That's a good thing. But you asked about, starting real estate and getting the first client or
how do you get that first?
Yeah. I mean,
first domino needs to fall.
Yeah. So for like retail real estate, getting the first client, you don't have experience. You can call people that at 24. None of my friends are really buying houses yet. I had the gym. That was a great network that I had already.
Yeah.
So I think a sale came from there. Honestly, I think my first sale or listing came from sitting on the floor of the brokerage. So you'd go in and you'd basically be an admin. So you sit and answer the phones. And a call came in for like a $350,000 listing in Delmont, actually right across the street from where I live now. And that was my first listing. But you listen and you ask the other agents in the office or your manager or mentor, whoever it may be, hey, what do I need to do here? And then I just did those things. I would go sit floor and use it to network or prospect for other leads. So I just did what they told me to do kind of. And the ball was rolling pretty good my first year. I'd say I did, I've been in this business long enough. I did well for the first year that I sold real estate just because I was willing to put in the work. I also had the time and flexibility to do that as well because I had set things up, right? It goes back to that day of vision that I had of like, hey, this is what I want to do with my life. Whether I was purposefully planning it out or just kind of like making it up as I went, everything fell into line because I had the gym, which allowed me to have time because the gym's not open 24/7. We have classes. So
right.
I had time to do other things and getting real estate. I had the time to start that up and actually spend time in the business and working on it to get clients. So that kind of helped me. And then from there, just built those processes, discipline, stuff like that. Networking's a big thing in real estate. I mean, you can't be like a silent agent. You have to tell people you're in real estate. And I think you should do that with any business you own.
So if somebody's listening to this, they want to get involved in real estate. They're like, I want to be an agent. First thing you need to do is understand that you have a network already. Yours was the gym.
Sure. Yeah.
Other people might have a network of friends. They might have a network of whatever that looks like. Start with your network, but also spend the time on the floor and answering phones.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that. It's not glorious. You know what I mean? A lot of those leads are probably cold.
Sure.
But at the same time, you don't have the market share. You don't have the name recognition. You're not Vicky Rutherford, whose face is all over the place.
Exactly.
You got to answer the phone sometimes.
Right.
And I think a lot of people getting started in an industry, they think dude, to build something, there's a million steps to get there.
Yeah.
So many people want to skip the first 10 steps and end up at the finish line.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't.
Literally anything.
Anything. Yeah.
Like anything.
Right. You're not going to go into the gym one day and be ripped the next day.
I wish it worked that way.
Yeah.
But not even close.
You can boil that down to action. Like, I think if I do anything well, it's that I kind of ignore everything else. I'm like, okay, here's what I want. There's the end. Let's just start moving. Right. Mm-hmm. That's how I've always been. And where I see a lot of people, because I've mentored people like in real estate, I've coached a lot of agents and helped them with their careers. And a lot of them are like paralyzed by, oh, I have to do this, or I have to make a plan first, or I need to get my business cards. For what? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one knows you. You have no experience. Just start like making calls, talk to as many people as possible, put your business card everywhere, sit on the floor, go to open houses, like be on social media. There's a ton of things you can do. Just go do them all. Yeah. And then wiggle yourself into a schedule that works.
We had a podcast with a guy who was sitting in that chair, Nathaniel Morton. He's a guy that basically left his job, secure job as a gym teacher to start his own business. And he gave us all t-shirts, and the t-shirt, his slogan for his business, the t-shirt, everything he does, his life, action is everything.
Yeah.
So many people are waiting for like, oh, the perfect time. Oh, it's just not the time. And there's something to be said about timing things. Yeah. But it's like if I was going to drive from here to the gym and I waited for every single light to be green,
it's never going to happen.
I'll never leave.
Yeah.
I would never, ever leave. I'd never make it to work.
Yeah. It's
Sometimes you just start driving, you hit a red light, you wait. Right. It turns green and then you keep driving. You'll never get there if you're waiting for the perfect conditions. That's not to say, ignore, certain market signals.
Sure.
But if you're waiting for like the vernal, like the equinox to align, on this date, this time, it's like, bro, just fucking do it. Just act.
If you've made the decision to do something, then start putting like just one foot in front of the other. The thing I tell my clients at the gym when I'm training them, because some people come into the gym, they have no idea what they're doing. They'll start thinking, I'll be like, hey, I'll give them a cue, right, for something. And I'll say, do this. And they'll start thinking about it and analyzing. What I tell them is, hey, I'll be the coach. Let me be your brain. You just move. So if I tell you and show you to do something, just do it. Mm-hmm. Because the quicker you fail at this 100 times, the more context you gather in your brain and your body, and the easier you're going to be able to learn. Mm-hmm. So when I tell you something new, you're going to have experience from failure to then get the right technique down.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in life. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you just start moving, if you make a few mistakes along the way, what are you doing? You're just learning.
That's it.
You're gathering context. You're gathering knowledge, information. School didn't teach me anything for business. Okay. Not much for business, right? Mm-hmm. Learning, opening a business taught me everything about business, right? And you learn it along the way. Then you maybe listen to some people that are, already ahead of you, and then you kind of just make your own way. But yeah, action is kind of the one thing that maybe people, struggle with.
It's the slogan that, I kind of live my life by. It's adapted a little bit from Ray Dalio's book, Principles. My slogan is pain plus reflection plus changed behavior equals progress.
Yep.
It's the simplest formula, but it's the most powerful. Yeah. If you do that every day in your business, in your life, in your marriage, and your fitness, then eventually 10 years you wake up and you're in great shape. You have a great marriage. You have a great business. Your finances are good. Yep. Pain plus reflection plus change behavior equals progress.
I feel like I'm constantly in that loop, and it makes for a happy life. Mm. Do you know what I mean? Like what you just said there, I equate to being happy, because you're not stagnant in any one thing. You're always reflecting on what you did and what you could do better. And then you're trying to change behavior to make yourself better. So if you're a husband and you guys get into a fight and you said something you didn't want to do, you reflect on that. That causes pain. Mm-hmm. You have some reflection, and then you change your behavior in the future. You became a better husband. Mm-hmm. Same thing with working out or dieting or your business. Mm-hmm. So I love that. I've never heard that before. That's great. And it makes total sense to me. And it's a great way to be happy in your life, because you're always doing something to get a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to go nuts with that. I think our culture has gone down this road with social media where it's like, you have to be better. There's just a lot of pressure on people. Mm-hmm. But I do think that you shouldn't be stagnant in any one area. You should always be like looking to just increase a little bit.
Yeah, it's a balance.
It is.
It's a balance. So we talked a lot about action, reflecting on, past mistakes or past wins.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell just by how you're talking, you've definitely had some mentors along the way.
Mm.
I want to hear a little bit about what's a real estate mentor that had a lot of impact on you, and kind of where did they have the most impact?
My business partner that I have now for my investing business. So we renovate houses, and we have a rental portfolio together. He's been a good mentor for me, like really good. I met him when I was really young, and he pretty much taught me everything that I wanted to know about real estate. Whatever we didn't know together, we would both learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's been a great mentor for me. So I'm glad that I've met him. He's been the longest mentor I've had. I've had other mentors on the way that come in for a season or a period. I may teach them something, they may teach me something, have some kind of relationship, and then, you may move on from them or whatever. But Dave who is my partner, he's been my biggest mentor real estate wise.
Mm-hmm.
And we've either hired other people to mentor us or teach us something that we don't know. Or we've met people along the way, or we're always networking. It's kind of what I'm talking about, like networking with other people, and they're teaching you something, or going to events, stuff like that.
How did you and Dave connect?
Pick up pieces along the way. Me and Dave connected on Craigslist.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I was in the gym. I think I already had my real estate license. What I was struggling with as a 26-year-old was finding other entrepreneurs and like-minded people to be around.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So I was kind of seeking that out at the time, trying to get around people. I mean, I've had the same friends for a very long time, and a few of them are entrepreneurs, but maybe in different fields, or maybe started after I started. So I couldn't really talk to them, and nor did I really want to. I wanted them to be my friends that I grew up with. So I was looking for other friends or people to talk to. I don't know what I was searching for on Craigslist that day, but I came across this ad. These two real estate guys from Penn Trafford were looking for a third person to run acquisitions and just handle minor stuff, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I reached out to them, and we ended up meeting at Panera, and it was like a perfect fit. They were reading the same books that I was reading. They were running with real estate investors and networking with people and they knew a lot more than me. So they took me on, which I was thankful for, and I got to learn a bunch from both of them. And then me and Dave split off a year or two later and just started doing our own thing.
So were you their agent, basically? Were you doing a lot of that stuff?
I wasn't technically their agent. They were, real estate. They were wholesaling at the time.
Okay.
So I started to learn that side of investing as well.
Yeah.
And ran their acquisitions. So just basically talking to sellers, buyers, and then, putting deals together and taking them to the closing table.
Mm-hmm.
So I was helping them with some of those things. And that's what they did, full time pretty much, was wholesale. So I got to learn that style of investing. And then I got to learn, buy and holds, renovating, flipping houses. So they taught me a lot.
You became useful.
Yeah.
Right? You were useful for them. They were useful for you,
for
too.
Sure. Yeah.
But you were also useful for them. I think sometimes when people think of mentorship, it's like they're thinking it's just a one-way street. Like, I'm just going to find this mentor who's going to take me to the promised land. It's like, dude, a lot of these guys you want to have mentor you, at least with the mentors that I have in my life, they're very busy.
For sure.
They're very busy. And I'm not saying that it's always transactional. The relationship always has to be transactional. But sometimes to get your foot in the door, you got to be kind of useful. You kind of have to be like, I'll kind of wade through the shit for you.
Right.
And then eventually you become more and more useful. And that mentorship kind of organically comes to be, instead of just going up to a rich guy and be like,
can I buy you a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
And I go to events with big real estate people, like, guys that own hundreds of units, maybe even thousands of units. And they're busier than I could even probably imagine.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. How many times after one of those things do they get a DM? Hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
It's like, dude, I can't have you can't, those guys can't have a cup of coffee with everybody. But I agree. Like if you're a younger person or you're pivoting and trying to something else, you want to learn how to get into business or some sector of business. Yeah. Make yourself valuable to somebody. Don't ask them out for a cup of coffee. It's like, hey, can I shadow you once a day? And I'll literally do all your admin work or once a week, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Like pick something up for them and don't worry about the money. Cause think about it. I met these guys on Craigslist, right? They paid me a pretty low percentage, but as I got better at doing what they were asking me to do, I would ask for a little bit more money. Be like, hey, I brought the buyer on this deal. Can I get a higher percentage on this one? They'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Like the value is there. But I didn't go into that thinking, I'm going to make so much money off this. I went into it thinking they have knowledge that I want to extract. And these are the guys that I was looking for. They're reading the same books. They're running with the same crews that I want to run with. So if this is my in, whatever the cost, it'll pay for itself. The ROI on clicking on that ad turned out to be pretty good.
Absolutely huge.
Right. But I didn't go into it thinking like, oh, these guys are going to make me so much money.
I think that's a big lesson. And I talk like I'm so old, you know what I mean? I'm 32.
For sure. But we're 10 years in. This is the first decade that we have experience as, I'm 33, you're 32.
Yeah.
I've been a decade at this now. So we do have some experience in it. That's why I told you in the beginning, I'm like, I don't want to preach to people and tell them you need to do this with your life. Everybody does that on social media. I don't get it. But, cause I'm not that important, but if I say something and it registers with you, that's what I would rather give away to people so they can maybe take an idea. That's more valuable than being like, you should do this.
So many, I'm going to say it, guys younger than us think they can skip all these steps. Like they should be paid so much right out of the gate. It's like, dude, it doesn't work like that. Yeah. I wish it did. I really wish it did.
Yeah.
But like, you have to kind of inch your way forward, develop skills, become more valuable. And when you can do that, that's when you can actually get the pay that you want. It's not going to come all at once. And that's why I feel bad for a lot of young cats. Come out of college, a lot of them will have $100,000 worth of debt. Then you got to buy a car, right? And the car is $40,000 because your friends want to see you in your car. And then you got to do all these things. And before you know it, you've pigeonholed yourself almost to the extent where I don't want to say you missed your window because I don't believe that. But you pigeonholed yourself in a way that it's very hard for you to aggregate the skills, to eat the shit necessary to get to the point where you can be like, have a partnership with somebody that's mutually beneficial for both of you.
Because you're expensing your time when you do those things, right? And you're losing your leverage over your time, I guess, which is what we were talking about before, I guess we started, or maybe that we were recording at that point in time. But, for a younger person, and thank God that I kind of did this, was live below my means. Like I didn't really care about the money. I knew eventually it might come, and I knew I could work hard. After the first couple of years in business, like I knew how to work hard, put in a long day so things could get done. You know what I mean?
Go to bed tired.
Exactly. And I lived below my means. Like I didn't really buy things that I couldn't afford. And as the money grew, that was a good position to be in. I became more valuable. So starting off, you're not going to be worth that much because you don't have the knowledge. But if you learn from somebody and you don't expense your time, meaning keep spending money so you can't live a little bit more freely and learn from people here and there, right? If you're working at a 9-to-5 and trying to learn a side hustle, but you need to make more money at your job, or you need to be at your job longer, you're losing that time to learn something to make yourself more valuable, to get to where you want to go a little bit quicker, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And it is it's a crime, man. Like I said, you're pushed into college. Everybody's pushed into college. And for some people that's great, but other people it really isn't.
Right.
So you might come out with $100,000 worth of debt and if the degree in something you're not going to use, like gender studies or some useless shit. And then you're always keeping up with the Joneses, always have the devil of debt at your heels. So you never can aggregate skills necessary to escape the rat race. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I'm not saying that's how it's designed for you to be a cog on the economic wheel, but I am saying that culturally we're pushed in a position where it's very hard to escape.
And socially too. I mean, I feel especially bad for younger men. I mean, and women too, but who have all the social media at their fingertips. And it's like that's why everybody wants to jump from point A to the finish line.
Right.
Is because they see the finish line. That's all they see. Right. Mm-hmm. And to live in that, we didn't really have that.
Right.
You know, Facebook was kind of like new.
Yeah, we had MySpace with like Tom was your top friend, and then you were like
that was just for like
on
music.
Like number 2. Yeah.
That's all everybody posted on there. We didn't have that when we started business, which I thank God for, because anybody can compare themselves to, and when you make it that accessible, that's not healthy.
No,
because this is a process. You have to be patient. You have to put in your time, like you're saying, and you have to become valuable to gain leverage, to then make connections that are going to get you to the next step. Like that takes a little bit of time and a lot of effort. Mm-hmm. And I just feel bad for anybody who wants to keep up with the Joneses and they kind of sell their time by buying a BMW when they're 24 years old, a $50,000 car, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're not learning anything. You're just trying to keep up with some other guy or girl who posted a car that you kind of think is normal to have. Mm-hmm. Right.
I gotta highlight 2 things. The first one has to do, maybe I'll just stick with one because I don't want to get too long-winded, but with social media, it's so nefarious towards your mental health because what you're doing is comparing what you're doing at that moment to the highlight that somebody's putting out on their social media feed.
Yeah.
Some people do. Nobody's like, oh, I just had a normal day today.
Yeah.
Like,
that's boring.
Or like, hey, I got to work today at 5 a.m. and I left at 9 p.m.
Right.
Instead, like, dude, even me, I don't really post often, but when I do post on my social stuff, it's like, this is me in Hawaii. This is me in Texas.
Right.
This is me in, you know what I mean? Doing this hike. But bro, like most of the time, it's a grind. It's a fucking grind. And then people that are scrolling are comparing what they're doing at that moment, which is probably just sitting down, trying to escape wherever you are, scrolling mindlessly through social media, to the highlight that somebody else puts on there. Mm-hmm. And then you're always trying to keep up with that highlight reel of somebody else's life. It's like, what are you doing, dude? If you analyze what social media is, it's literally facilitating your misery. It's facilitating your inability to escape the rat race. What I do, and I'm going to recommend everybody do this. I'm just going to say it. I know we talked about not preaching. I'm just going to fucking say it.
Say it.
Set a 15-minute time limit on your social media. Set it. And don't fucking ignore it. Ignore. I catch myself doing that when I'm anxious, but then I'm like, what am I doing? Yeah. I'm wasting my time. So I'll just go in and delete the app. Set the 15-minute time limit. Look at social media, do your shit, waste your time, and then game time.
Right.
Get out of there and execute on actually turning a highlight of your life instead of mindlessly scrolling on the highlight of somebody else's.
Yeah.
And it's bothersome to me because again, you said like socially, culturally, we're always funneling ourselves into this almost like debt cycle of misery for your average American. And it's got to fucking end.
Yeah, it is. It is a poison for sure. I'm glad we didn't have that when we were starting out business because I didn't know what anybody else was doing.
Yeah.
And maybe a couple people. I think like I listened to Gary Vee back then when we first started because he was just coming up. Mm-hmm. But there wasn't like reels or anything like that when we started in business. So you were kind of just silently hustling and, grinding for 5-6 years, until you could bring your head out of the water. And that's everybody's story. We're not like special in that story. It's like, if you want to work for yourself and open your own business, just be prepared. Like you're not going to have a highlight reel for 10 years.
Yeah.
You're going to eat shit for 10 years.
Yep.
You're going to be working hard. You might have a couple glimpses here and there, but you can't just do it for a highlight reel. That don't get into business or anything outside of a 9-to-5 job. If you want a highlight reel, because you just won't have one.
You won't have it.
And don't compare yourself to those people. I mean, I think that's a huge attack on our younger generation right now is just the comparison because it's just stealing their joy. And I think what I focus on nowadays mostly is like just being a happy person. And I am. I mean, I wake up every morning and I know I'm happy. And I look at some other people and have conversations with them. And the way we talk is just patently different.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. They're
like the things that come out of their mouth.
Yeah.
And, when I have a bad day, I'm aware of what I'm saying. I'm aware when I'm negative and complaining and stuff like that for the most part. But just staying off that for a majority of your life. I spend a little bit of time on my phone.
Yeah, we all do.
And it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But you can tell when it makes you unhappy or when you're comparing yourself and it's like, dude, look at your life. Look how blessed you are. And if you're in business for yourself, just get off that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You just grind silently for as long as you possibly can. And when you're ready to break out, then you can put some highlight reels up.
Yeah, the success will speak for itself.
That post that I put up the other day on Facebook, that was a 10-year post.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was proud of where I'd come from starting in business and in real estate to now. We closed on our best property to date.
That was a 10-year post.
That's a 10-year post.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm not putting up one of those every week.
Right.
10 years of work to get to that post. And that's why it was important to me. I put that out.
Definitely.
And it meant a lot to me because I was like, your younger you deserves this, kind of post. Because I don't post that much online.
Right. And it was inspiring.
Yeah, I hope so.
I read it and I was like, damn, this dude's really doing it. And then immediately, as soon as I read it, I reached out to you.
You reached out,
I was
which
like,
I'm
bro,
glad you did.
I was like, get on the podcast, bro. We need to hear this.
Because doing stuff like this, if one person finds a little bit of motivation to do something different with their life and it turns out to be a net positive for them, that's a great thing. And they're, happier doing something else. That's great. And then everybody's story is so cool that if you can just listen to as many stories as possible and then you have your own or you take a little nugget from somebody, you'll end up creating your own story.
Let's get a little more. So that was great high level stuff for 45 minutes. Let's get a little more tactical into real estate.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about your portfolio you currently have. I know that you do buy and hold investing as well as flips. Let's talk about the buy and hold investing. What does that look like?
Yeah. So we have 12 doors.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know how many places. I think it's like 7 or 8.
Okay. So a couple duplexes here and there.
Duplexes,
single family homes.
Single family. And we have like a commercial with 2 apartments and a garage space.
Okay.
So it comprises all up to be 12 doors, 12 rentable spaces.
Okay. And what was the first deal?
So this is the second iteration of our portfolio. Over COVID, we had 12 or 13 maybe. I think we ended up selling, most of them.
Okay.
Over COVID.
Honestly, that was a good time to sell.
Yeah.
You saw a run up.
We cashed in. We ended up selling all of them. I think we kept one duplex that we bought for, I think, $15,000. It just didn't make any sense to sell that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the equity is insane.
It's insane. And the cash flow is crazy on that one. But so we cashed in our portfolio over COVID. Last year, we went on a buying spree. We bought back in. We were able to find a lot of really great off-market, undervalued deals. So we bought a lot of equity with our new portfolio. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we wanted to get away from on the new portfolio was utilities.
Okay.
So we had a 6-unit and that we paid all the utilities.
Okay.
They were all, I can't remember specifically, but we paid a lot of the utilities. I think the gas through that building and some of the electric or something. It was just a lot. So it pinched our margins a lot.
Yeah. Because they're not going to care about it.
They don't care.
Yeah, they'll leave the lights on, turn the heat on, leave the windows open. Yeah,
you would go into somebody's in the middle of January, and it would be like you were in Hawaii.
Yeah,
I thought palm trees were going to grow in this place.
They don't give a shit.
They don't care. They'll spend as much money. So we wanted to change that. We wanted to get everything separated for a long-term strategy. Which nowadays we really only look at things that are separated or could easily be we could easily put the money into and separate them. That kind of clean, a little bit more clean with utilities. So bought in, did that. Our portfolio looks better. We're at the same mark that we were at before, but we're netting more.
Okay, good.
So that's a good thing.
So top line is the same, bottom line is better.
Yeah.
Okay. Real quick, before we get into that, did you 1031?
No.
Okay, so you didn't do a like kind exchange, because I know some people will do that where they'll sell the property. Okay, but sometimes you don't have to.
Right.
It makes it easier if you don't.
Right.
Gives you flexibility.
So, no, we didn't do that. There's still things in real estate. There's so much to learn.
Yeah.
I haven't done a 1031 yet, but when we bought back in, like I said, we got rid of all the utilities in our name, and then we bought a lot of equity on these new purchases, which we had a lot before. But we purchased a lot of equity because we were just finding good deals.
Yeah.
So what we bought them at was, 30, 40% under market value. So that's a good thing for our portfolio as well. And then we ended up purchasing all the ones that we have now in cash.
That's
so
awesome.
Everything's debt free.
It's great.
Which is good. You know, a lot of real estate people are like, I want to take on as much debt as possible. It just wasn't the strategy that we went with at the time purchasing this new lot of real estate. That's not to say that we won't have debt on them sometime in the future.
What made you want to not get debt?
It's easier to pivot, you know, when the real estate market changes. Like you're a lot more secure not having debt because you don't have anybody calling for that debt, right?
Right.
You know, we try to pay back what we spent on via cash.
Yeah.
But there's no bank calling me, or if a tenant leaves, or if there was a recession or anything like that, it's just easier to pivot that way.
There's safety.
Exactly.
There's safety when not having debt.
So that was probably, you know, that's what we're thinking. We also try to pick up creative real estate deals as well, like subject twos. My first real estate that I purchased, I think I was 28. I still really didn't have the ability as a 1099 to go get a bank loan. So we assumed somebody else's mortgage, which is a great way to get into real estate. So
then you can refinance it eventually, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
We ended up selling that, making some money, and you know, that was a good deal. But real estate's very creative. I always tell people if two people can agree on something, you can probably be done in real estate.
So you talked about buying these properties. You talked about creativity and buying these properties under market rent. How did you do that? What did you do to get these properties in a tight market over the last year and a half under market value?
So I'll go through a couple different strategies just in case anybody is like in real estate. We do a couple different things. We send out mail, right?
Okay.
So we'll pull lists and mail lists of people that have owned properties for a long time, that are vacant, that have high equity, that may be distressed or in foreclosure or notice of foreclosure. So we'll pull lists like that and we'll send out mail, right? This is something that we used to do a lot of. We do a little bit of it now. We've had billboards. We hang door hangers on people's houses. Like when we're just driving around, if we see, you know, a distressed house or a rental property that maybe looks really good that we might want to buy, we'll put a door hanger on there. You can look up people's numbers. So if you're in an area or you bought one duplex and you want the one next to it, you can call that owner. You can easily source their number nowadays using the internet. You can call them and say, hey, I'd love to buy your property. You can go to networking groups, and we've probably found a deal doing each one of these methods. You know what I mean?
So you're not really using the MLS.
We'll go look at MLS properties. Absolutely. Yeah.
But that's going to be tough to find under market value on the MLS.
Right. Yeah. We use wholesalers.
Okay.
You know, and they'll go out and source deals. They're kind of bird dog deals for you. And you'll say, okay, this is a great deal. You pay them a little fee and then you purchase the property. So, you know, an accumulation of all those things is kind of how we find deals, source deals. My favorite one this year or last year when we purchased it was I actually occasionally, probably like once a month, maybe once every other month, I'll go onto Facebook, look at all the rentals on Facebook, and I'll look for mom and pop landlords, not the management companies. So I'll find a rental from a mom and pop and I'll DM them and say, hey, I see that your property's for rent. I'm not interested in renting it, but if you're interested in selling it, I'd love to have a conversation.
Smart.
Yeah.
It's very smart.
Really good way to find deals for anything. Flipping a house, buying a rental, you know, wholesaling a house, whatever you want to do. So I did that once last year, or it worked once really well. And I had to follow up with this lady because she thought I was just a tire kicker and would go away after a couple of messages. But I stayed after. I followed up with her every week, and she eventually gave me her husband's number, called him, had a conversation. We ended up meeting up, looking at the property, and then we purchased that property.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So that's a good method. So
it's a great method because what people don't realize is there's a lot of landlords that don't want to be landlords.
Well, yeah.
They're like, oh, it's a headache. This sucks, blah, blah, blah. It's like, maybe how you're managing it sucks.
Right.
But if you buy that asset off of it and you manage that asset correctly, it could be a gold mine for you. There's a lot of hobby landlords, mom and pop landlords that are lacking the professionalism. And in reality, it's more of a headache for them than it is and I use this term very loosely, passive income stream for them.
Right. Or they've owned it so long, like in this instance, they owned it so long, they were getting annoyed, like you said, with putting another tenant in there, and they had all of them way under market.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mom and the old school landlords who did it as kind of like a hobby, they're always like, well, they pay their rent, so we just want to keep it there. Whereas like our generation owning real estate, we're like, listen, the market, the rent went up. Rents have gone up this year, and we're gonna charge you for it. Like, we have to keep on pace with market.
You have to. It's a business
to a certain degree. I mean, you have to get them close to market value. If somebody's paying and they're a good tenant, you can make judgment calls, but you can't go 10 years without raising rents. And the market was left in the past.
Yeah.
You're no longer on par. So a lot of these landlords will be that, they'll have them way undervalued, which undervalues the real estate in some instances. So you can find a deal that way.
I think that's a great strategy for people that are listening now, because I can think of 2 guys I talk to that are trying to break into the market, and they're like, oh man, there's no deals. There might not be deals on the MLS. There might be, but there might be deals out there. You have to kind of shake and move and do the strategies that you're talking about. So the first one would be go on Facebook, look for rental properties, message them and ask if they're interested in selling, if you're interested in buying.
Yeah.
You could also assume a lease, a subject to. You could assume
you could assume a mortgage, which would be my next question, right? For anybody who's starting in real estate, if you have the ability to talk to a seller, my first question is always like, are you willing to sell or finance this? First question I always ask. Even if I plan on doing a mortgage or not, or paying cash for it, I still ask the question because I want to know all my options in real estate when I'm purchasing a deal. So I'm going to ask, are you willing to sell or finance? Is there some creative deal that I can go really low money out of pocket for to purchase this property? So if you're starting out, like I started out with no money, no credit, like not able to get a bank loan, that would be like my go-to question all the time. Because there's a lot of landlords that are more savvy, and they don't want to have a $50,000, $100,000 income stream come into them right away that they have to pay taxes on.
Right.
They might take a little portion and almost subsidize their real estate to you to pay them monthly. Right. And then you get to control the property. That's the goal. That's what my partner taught me at a young age, is like, control is everything in real estate. So however you can take control of a property, that's the goal. Right. Whether it be through owning, taking over the mortgage, or a land, owning the property on paper. So that's the best thing. The best advice I could give to anybody who wanted to start in real estate who really doesn't know how to, is get creative and learn all your avenues and options.
That seller finance could also, depending on how you structure it, can also isolate you from the risk of a balloon mortgage, the risk of a rate reset, the risk of what the rates are right now. Because somebody might actually give you a better deal than that you can currently get at, Citizens Bank or something like that.
We just bought one with a lower interest rate than anybody could get on market. We assumed a mortgage. We actually renovated the property. We're getting ready to sell it. So we're going to pay off that mortgage. But over the last 5-6 months that we've owned it, our mortgage is way lower than anybody else that would be going to market now to get a mortgage. I think we were at like 4 or 5% on that mortgage. That's
awesome.
In the 7s now.
Yeah, it's in the 7s. Plus, if you're buying a rental property, it usually is a point higher.
Right.
So you might be at 8.5%.
Yep.
Where if you're at 4 or 5, that's a huge difference in the actual cash flow analysis.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at a property to buy and hold, we'll get into flips later. Are you looking at I know you're trying to get it for the right price, obviously. You said you can find distressed properties that you can finance correctly. Is it a cash flow play? Is it an equity play? Is it both? What do you kind of prioritize in your personal investment portfolio?
A little bit of both. The places that we purchase in right now, or that most of our portfolio is in, it's going to generate more cash flow than it is equity standpoint. I think the good thing is we're buying them under the market value. So we're building in equity on the purchase, and then appreciation is going to build us equity as well, because they're going to appreciate over time.
Inflation usually drives it.
They're going to perform well too.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a great selling point when we go to sell. But we look for a little bit of both. They all cash flow really well. I try to be around $300 a door if I can, as close to that number.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a great number.
Yeah. So if we can do that and get into a property and it makes sense, then we'll buy it. Also, deferred maintenance is something we look for. we're trying not to buy properties with a ton of deferred maintenance unless we're going with a different strategy, like a BRR method.
Okay.
But yeah, that can get you in trouble over time. And some of our earlier properties had a lot of deferred maintenance. So you're spending a lot of that cash flow on maintaining the property up to, where it needs to be.
One thing that I made this mistake at the beginning, and I've learned this the hard way, but now that I know it, it's actually allowed my portfolio to perform a lot better. There's a difference between cash flow on paper and pure cash flow. So cash flow on paper, let's say I get $1,000 for a property. I'm just going to make the math easy. And let's say they pay all utilities and my mortgage is $600.
Yeah.
On paper, I made $400. But, and this is the big but, and this is where I got in trouble at first. I was able to correct course. Now I don't get in this trouble anymore. And I want people to know this. That $400 is like make-believe cash flow because let's say that roof only has 10 years left on it.
Right.
That's a capital expenditure that eventually is going to have to come out. Let's say your hot water tank is at the end of its useful life. Your HVAC is at the end of its useful life. So after you take out and average out per month the capital expenditure, you might not have any cash flow when you put everything aside, the maintenance, like you said, the capital expenditure. So you have to make sure, and like you said, we got in a little bit of trouble with some deferred maintenance. Dude, I got in big fucking trouble from deferred maintenance on my second duplex. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm buying this duplex, 3-bedroom, 2-bath on each side,
deal. Yeah.
$80,000. I'm going to crush it in this thing. Needed a new roof.
Yeah.
Needed a new HVAC on both sides. Needed new hot water tanks on both sides. I threw a tenant out, needed a complete gut job. So now that property is performing very well. But if you actually look at, since I've had it for 5 years, I'm probably now just breaking even on it.
Now you're accounting for that stuff when you purchase, right?
Yep.
You're accounting for, all right, here's my deferred maintenance costs, which is then my numbers are going to run off this if I spend this much money on the property.
Definitely.
Which is smart. And, shit's going to happen.
You learn.
Yeah, you learn, right? That's good. I mean, you learned that. You recorrected.
Pain plus reflection plus change behavior is progress.
Yeah, we're not in the business of selling holds. So it's like, great, I've got 30 years of doing this. Luckily, the holds that we have, I mean, I still sell real estate and we flip houses. So I'm not reliant on that cash. It's more of a long-term retirement investment.
Yep.
So if I have a year where some deferred maintenance pops up, I'm not going to cry about it.
Yeah.
I still want the property to
perform. You have other
well.
cash flow.
Right.
And you can use that to preserve and drive appreciation. And if there's a little bit left over, that's great too.
Sure. And everybody has a different strategy. So if you're talking about real estate, it's like come up with a strategy that you want to execute because everybody's is a little bit different.
Yep.
I talk to a lot of investors and I'm like, tell me about your goals because you might be buying for a completely different reason than I'm buying for. And your goals may be completely different. So real estate's very deep in what it can offer people.
There's no doubt. That's like, talking with somebody just recently that's way, way richer than me. They can afford to get kicked in the nuts $500 every month in negative cash flow if that property is appreciating by $1,500 a month. If you're in an area that's growing, you might have on paper, you're losing money in terms of cash flow, but you confront that with the great job or tons of wealth that you have. And when it comes time to sell, you may have appreciated $200,000 on that property.
Yeah.
And even if it cost you $20,000 to get there. So you might have a 10x return when it comes time for you to sell. That's somebody that's very rich. Somebody else that's maybe not that rich might have to find a property that's cash flow positive after you take out for capital expenditures, deferred maintenance every single month because they can't front that kick in the nuts every month. So I agree with you. Understanding where you're at financially, understanding how real estate can be a vehicle of wealth for you is just as important as understanding how to leverage a deal, what deal to find. You have to be perfectly honest with what you're trying to get out of it. And then you can actually find the deal you're looking for.
Yeah, 100%. Everybody's got different deals. When you're buying real estate, it's good to talk to somebody who knows the language kind of and the landscape and can understand what your goals are. So I think that's important. Shameless plug there. And I mean, it's so open to whatever landscape you want to deliver in real estate. I always say get rich slow.
It is. It's a get rich slow.
Yeah. But it's a great asset class because I can see it. I can drive there and I can touch it. And if something breaks, it actually breaks, where you could be in the stock market and you could lose 30% of your portfolio, but it's just fairy dust. Like you never saw it. But being balanced is good for sure.
Definitely having a balance. It's like, I started leveraging pretty heavy into paper assets recently because, I feel comfortable with real estate.
Yep.
Now I'm starting to get into like mutual funds, bonds, things like that. So I agree with you. A little bit of diversification is important. With real estate, you have your buy and holds. You also do some flips.
Yep.
What's the difference there? What are you looking for? Is it a different type of deal? Do you just wait for the property to appreciate enough where the return on equity isn't great? What is it that you're looking for in a flip versus a buy and hold, or is it the same?
Definitely not the same. I mean, you come up with your number template, like however you're running your numbers, or if you're speaking to other people in real estate, gathering information on how they run their numbers, you kind of just plug and play. Like, hey, we found this house, we got this lead. Does it work would it be a great hold property or would it be a great flip property? And sometimes you could just look at a house and know like, okay, this is a great, based on the area, the condition, the price, I know this is a great hold, long-term hold value, right? Some of them you're going to get and you're going to be like, this would be a great renovation. It's really outdated. I know I can get it for under, market value. And I know I can put X amount of dollars in and sell it for profit, right? So you kind of determine based on whatever lead comes into you or whatever strategy you're doing. Maybe you're just doing flips. So you're looking for that style of house and you run your numbers based on that style. So you go into the house and take a look. What do the carpets look like? The walls, the paint, the kitchen, the bathrooms. How much is it going to cost me? And then just run your numbers backwards off of what you think it'll sell it for. What I've been taught is you always make your money on the purchase. I would say on either buy and holds or flips, but really on flips.
Okay.
You're going to make your money when you purchase the property.
So does that mean getting it at the right price?
Yeah, you need to buy it at the right price because things are probably going to go wrong. You're going to spend more money than you budgeted for. And you need to have that, but you need to buy smart. So we're conservative purchasers. We don't chase the market and we don't try to make our money by saying, okay, we'll pay $20,000 more for this property. We'll hope that hopefully it sells for $20,000 on the back end, right? You don't want to rely on that all the time. So be smart when purchasing is what we try to do and just run our numbers. Like we think it's going to cost this much. Here's how much it's going to sell for. After we take out the rehab costs, what's left over? If that fits our mold, then we'll put an offer on the property.
That makes perfect sense. You want to make sure, and I'm sure you build in a little buffer.
Oh yeah.
I mean, build in like,
build in some buffer. And sometimes things go really well. Sometimes the market appreciates in that time that you owned it. Maybe there's a comp that comes up and things go really well. Maybe the opposite happens. So it's like you have to have enough profit margin to weather a storm, I think, in most instances.
One thing I want to just highlight, and I'm sure you and I can resonate with this, is for flips, it sounds like you said, you got to be with anything, you got to be very careful with the buying. You got to make sure that, the numbers look good. I think it's more evident for buy and hold versus flip, but I think it's the same thing. When you own a small business, each property is like a tiny little small business. Yeah. It's like you can take the skills you had in small business, understanding cash flow, understanding, equipment breaks down. You can take all of that information. You have rent, you have all this different stuff. If you can grow a successful small business, I promise you have the skills to get involved in the asset class of real estate because each one is like a tiny little small business.
Tiny little spreadsheet.
That's it. Yeah, it's a tiny little spreadsheet, just like a little business. And then your portfolio as a whole is also like a business.
Right.
So being able to, I think there's a lot of overlap. I'm sure you saw that when you were running a gym and then you started getting to real estate. You're like, this is the same shit.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. One's with muscles, the other one's with like LVT floor and paint, but it's the same idea.
Right.
So I think if you're in small business, that's a great asset class.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely fantastic asset class. And you can control it. Right. Just like small business. Sometimes if you're like, damn, I got to put some sweat equity into the business right now to really get our numbers up. Same thing applies to real estate. Like shit, I got to actually put on, a bad hoodie and some sweatpants and actually paint this motherfucker.
Yeah, I'm not scared to get dirty.
Yeah.
Whatever I have to do to make my business go. A lot of people preach the, you should own a business and it should be at this level where you're completely detached from it and you have somebody who manages everything and CEO. And it's like, great. Yeah, you should try to build your business to that. But sometimes you're in the trenches and I'm okay with that. Yeah. I'm okay with living a life where I have to go and do something,
Definitely.
Eventually throughout my life, I hope that I'll grow my businesses all enough where I'm like, I can just go away.
You can live in Egypt for 6 months.
Exactly. But from where I started in business to now, I'm halfway there, let's say.
Yeah.
So I think you see a lot of the highlight reels or listen to a lot of the, the people that are selling you their courses on Instagram and on Facebook and YouTube. And they're like, well, you need to have this small business or your real estate completely work for you without you doing anything. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be like that. That's just of their opinion and what the end goal might be for a lot of people.
And it might take decades to get there.
It might take a long time. And you might never get out of it. There's a lot of people that are very happy just running their businesses too.
Definitely.
And that's okay. As long as you're happy, it's fine.
Yeah.
Right. If you're happy doing what you're doing, if you have to go, jump into your business for whatever it may be, or put down some flooring, that's fine. If you like doing that, then good.
Definitely.
I think what I've learned over the years is like, you don't have to listen to the people on your phone. Mm-hmm. They're just opinions. Do what you want. Mm-hmm. If you are in business for yourself, you can make it up. It's your playbook, right?
Definitely.
I think that's important.
Definitely.
To know.
And I think you're spot on. And again, it comes down to skipping steps. I think if your goal is to grow a business that is completely hands off, you can do it.
For sure.
But it's going to take time. You're not going to skip from step 1 to step 10.
Or it'll take a lot of money.
It'll take a lot of money. You're either going to shrink your margins because sometimes you have to buy convenience, or it's going to take a lot of time. Probably going to take both.
Yeah.
Probably going to take more time and more money. And I think that I was sitting in that chair was Wayne Norris. This was months ago. Dude grew Durabond steel, made a $400 million deal with Dominion Gas or something like that. Like, we're talking big time shit. And he said, you know why businesses fail? And I was like, all ears. Shit.
Why?
I want to know.
Yeah.
Said, what happens is somebody grows a business and they want everybody to know how successful that business is. So what they do is they build a nice big office building and then they start throwing parties. They're doing all this thing and they lose track of what actually made them the money in the first place, which is the shop. They don't spend any time in the shop.
Right.
And before you know it, somebody else is out there grinding up in their shop and they're going to eat your lunch. Mm-hmm. So people try to get to that point, I think, way too fast. They try to put people in positions quickly instead of guys that'll actually grow the business, guys that can actually grow the business. And before they know it, some young hustler that's spending 12, 14 hours a day working their ass off is going to eat your fucking lunch.
Yeah.
And it's the truth, man. I see it. A lot of businesses don't fail because of outside factors, right? Some businesses fail because of inside factors. Person loses, they take their eyes off the prize.
It's like the bar owner who is in the kitchen or behind the bar to build their business, and then they're at the bar.
Yeah.
And then they lose their business.
Yes.
It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, you handle your business however you want to. If you're somebody who can grow a business and do it really fast and get out of there and things are running well and you're really good at managing, that's great. Mm-hmm. If takes you a while to get to that point, it's also fine.
Yeah.
I think there's just too many opinions around that in the business world, and each business looks a little bit different.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because I think you and I currently are still both owner operators.
Yeah. And I still operate all my businesses and I work in them, but I work in them way less than I did when I started.
For sure. Me
Do you know what I mean? I put in a lot of sweat equity. I was almost a slave to the business. Yep. Not that I hated that.
Right.
I enjoyed working hard and learning how.
You paid the dues up front.
And then I kept working in the business and I still am in there. I always appreciate the old guy that has owned a business, like a shop business or something, for a very long time. Yeah. He's like retired or sold the business, but still comes around the shop, shows his face, asks how the family is. That's important.
Definitely.
I like that old style of business as well still.
It's cool, man. Like you said, there's a million ways to skin this cat.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you don't have to always escape your business.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, man. I love the gym.
Right.
I love going in, seeing people, lifting.
Right.
I fucking love it.
Me too. Keeps me, listen, I'm in there because I need to work out too.
Yeah.
I need to stay young. I have goals to not be crippled when I'm older. It's like, I got to still put in the time, and we both have our own gyms. What better way to do it at your own place?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm curious too. Now let's pull out a crystal ball. Okay. Because this is going to be, obviously this isn't financial advice. This isn't exactly wild speculation, but I don't want to say concerns, but the real estate market is a little strange right now, because you would expect this high cost of leverage to really be driving down prices. And I guess in some areas prices are going down, and we are seeing some depreciation.
Yeah.
But it seems like prices are still pretty high.
Yeah.
In the next 24 months, where do you kind of see real estate going?
Yeah. I hate these questions.
I know, but I had to ask anyway.
No, yeah.
Because I have my opinions,
it.
and like, I want to see where we kind of intersect or kind of like veer off.
I mean, I'll just say, I don't know.
No, neither of us do. We have no idea.
We don't know what's going to happen. And I'm really not like, I do like looking at stats and analyzing the market. I also enjoy looking at the history of the market and studying and asking people. I think the best way is like, what do you think about the real estate market? Like, this is a good question for a lot of people. Where do I think it'll be? I don't know. I think if they just raised the rates again, I think yesterday, a quarter point. If you look historically on what I've heard, that's not a good sign for, the market kind of falling after that. Another, raise in rates, and then they'll stay. Something might happen. Who knows? Some of the bigger metros nationwide are what's pulling down the numbers. So I think we're down 23% in home sales. I think for price as compared to last year. So I think some of the bigger metros that were overinflated, Nashville, I'm trying to think what other ones.
Probably some places
California,
in Florida, I'm sure. Yeah, Cali.
Florida, Texas, maybe even. Some of those big metros, they're probably pulling back a little bit. We're not seeing that as much right now in Pittsburgh, because we're slow to react to everything. We're not a big metro. We're not a super small metro, or maybe we are, but we feel the impact of everything a little bit later than everybody else. So, we're dealing with the same inventory problem a lot of people are dealing with. So it's keeping the prices high, and the buyers that are in the market, when a good house comes on the market, it is going quickly still. What's shifted from COVID is that everybody was in a frenzy and purchasing homes that needed $40,000 worth of work with a new roof and a new kitchen and a new bathroom to get it up to market value. They're paying market value. They need to put that money into it. So they're paying $20,000 over asking.
Crazy.
Those aren't good situations.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think the market's going to stay at that appreciated level. I think it's going to pull back a little bit, and it's going to feel more normal, as it has been feeling more normal. I think the buyers are more concerned with condition now than they were over the pandemic. So they're not buying those properties. Those properties that are priced at market value are not getting multiple offers. They're sitting on the market, and the sellers are having to draw them back a little bit in price, right? The properties that are really well conditioned, those ones are going for the premium, because I think the buyers they're not going to do that again. They learned from COVID, and I know a lot of people who got into houses, paid over, had to put money into the house, and are just trying to extract that money so they can go into another better deal, right? In 24 months, I think there will be some kind of turbulence, I think. I don't know if we'll have a full-on recession. I think the prices will drop a tiny bit, but I don't know. I think the buyers are still out there, and if they can somehow bring the interest rates back down a little bit more, it'll even open up more buyers. So I could see it maintaining, feeling a bit normal, and maybe even a little bit slow. As far as it falling out from underneath us, I don't necessarily see that happening.
I think you and I are in agreement there. I think that in order for us to see a collapse in price, like a true huge collapse in price, I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to dumb it down in a way that I can understand it into basic supply and demand. We would need to see either a major increase in demand or a major decrease in demand, or a major increase in supply.
Yeah.
Where I could see a major increase in supply happening is if people start to lose their properties. let's say there's a massive unemployment wave.
Right.
People lose their
Which
job.
happens in a recession.
Yep.
So if a recession hits, unemployment will go up.
Yep.
And then sales will start happening,
Definitely.
which will change the landscape. So that's what you should be looking for, is like, keep an eye on the unemployment number, what's happening on that front, because that'll really dictate the supply and demand. I mean, one thing that's true is somebody's going to buy and sell a house every day.
Yes.
Because some people, we need housing, right?
Right.
So it's going to happen. So I think right now there's still enough demand and such a lack of inventory that, like, even the demand that's there, even if it dwindles because of the interest rate a little bit going back up, is still enough to push the prices or at least keep them pretty stable.
Yeah,
because those are the people that need houses.
Right.
Like, they're the ones purchasing or first in line to purchase, right? Because they're like, we have no other option. We need this house. It fits all our criteria. We need to make an offer, right? And then there's the other people that are maybe a little slower than that. They don't need it as quite as much and maybe are waiting for the interest rates to fall. I don't know. I don't know where interest rates will be, and I don't know where the market will be. I definitely think it's cooled since the pandemic, but you can't really compare to the pandemic. It was this freak of nature
Crazy
storm that came in the real estate market. I actually took a management role where I was a director of an office over COVID. So I didn't sell, but I saw what the market did. The time that I sold was before COVID. And then I stopped selling in that 2-year window that I directed. And it was like this market. So that was like the 2018 prior to 2018 market, 19 market. That's what this market feels like. More of a normal market.
Okay.
Like, if you don't price correctly and your condition's not great, you're going to sit. You can't price your home nowadays like you did in the pandemic levels, because the interest rates are up there and buyers just won't pay for it.
So in short, you think that the real estate market will feel more normal as it has historically?
I think it feels more normal now. As far as the future goes, we'll have to see what happens.
If a major recession happens, then everything changes.
Yeah.
Or a pandemic happens, everything changes.
Look at foreclosures, look at unemployment. Those are probably some key indicators that'll tell you, like, what's going to happen. You can usually feel the market too. Like, just if you keep your pulse on the market, you'll be able to tell, like, what's happening.
Definitely. You go on Realtor and then you look like, oh man, this house sat for 200 days. You don't really see that now.
So you might see
it.
That houses that are sitting too is also a symptom of COVID, because a lot of agents are still pricing like it's COVID. You can get away with anything. I used to, agents would call past clients and be like, what do you want for your house? Yeah. That's not a strategy. Yeah. Right? It's like, what number do you want? I'll go get it.
Yeah.
You can't price like that right now. So those agents that are still playing that game, they're the ones that are, playing with fire, because they're pricing too high, or sellers even. They're pricing too high. They're unwilling to come down to the new market values, and which are going to be lower, and their houses are sitting. So that kind of throws in some numbers too, that when you look at it, you're like, wow, this has been sitting a long time. But it could also just be like, this person's an idiot and priced it way too high.
Right.
So it's really hard to get a pinpoint on the market. Some agents are like, we're not going to go into a recession, which obviously is good for business. Some people are doomsdayers. I'm kind of right in the middle. Like, just keep your eye on the market, talk to people about what they're feeling, and look at some key indicators. You could probably, no one's going to predict it, but you could have a good look at it and then be able to make decisions as the market goes.
Definitely.
The nice thing about Pittsburgh is, if you see it in the big metros, something bad happening, it's probably coming our way, but it's going to be 3 to 6 months.
Yeah. You'll see it later.
Yeah. It's great. That's a great thing about living in Pittsburgh.
It's a little slower.
A little slower.
Yeah. Real estate is so hyper local too.
Yeah.
Because they could be slower into Pittsburgh, but you might have the best street in a great school district. Sure. You might not even feel it.
Yep.
You might not even feel it.
Yeah. The rest of the US might be burning down, and Pittsburgh may be, the little blip in the road. Who knows? But just be, if you're investing in any asset class, you should be reading something, multiple sources, at least monthly, just to keep up with, hey, I invested in this. I want to make sure I know what's going on.
Right.
If I need to pivot or make any decisions.
Definitely. Yeah. And a little bit of diversification isn't a bad thing either.
Be in a couple things. But if we hit a recession, they're all going to go to shit.
Yeah, definitely. And we could be.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to touch on is, and then we'll wrap it up. We've been talking for a long time. This has been great. But one thing I know is that with a lot of commercial leverage, commercial debt, they usually have a rate reset after X amount of time. What I was reading about as somebody that wants to buy commercial, that is what I want to do in the next 24 months. I want to buy or build 14,000 square feet. That's what I'm going to do.
Perfect.
There is 50% of leveraged commercial real estate will have a rate reset in the next 24 months. So what that tells me is that if somebody bought commercial real estate at an overvalued amount and they have to re-leverage the debt on that real estate at the new rate, they could have that commercial real estate be completely backwards. So you might have like a great deal on one day, the next day you are completely underwater. So for me with commercial real estate, like you said, nobody can predict the future. I'm not betting on this. I'm making different moves outside of just doing this, but I'm also playing I hate to say it like this, but I don't think anybody's going to rob me, cash heavy right now. To the point where, I talked to my financial advisor. He's like, bro, I don't know why you have so much cash. It's being eaten up by inflation and all that stuff. My gamble is that when these rates reset, when this commercial real estate, when the piper comes for his fucking payment, I'm going to be in a good position to swallow up a building that I really need to continue to grow my business.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm not going to comment on the commercial aspect of being, positive or minus on that. But what you said is you're playing defense right now in your business.
Yes.
You're stacking cash, which is great. Like
I've dry powder right now.
I think that's a savvy move. So your goals are aligning with your finances. You're not going into debt by, buying new equipment or whatever it may be. You're just stacking cash because in the future, that at some point you want to play offense and purchase something.
Yes.
If the speculation is we may fall into something of a recession or a period of time where you are going to be able to buy a piece of commercial real estate at what you want it, how you want to, you're going to have that opportunity because you've been playing defense. So I think in business and investing, whatever you're doing, going through offense and defense is the best way to play it. Sometimes you're stacking cash.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're investing heavy. When should you do that? It's up to you and what your knowledge base is and who you surround yourself with. But, I think that's a great strategy for any investing. Sometimes you play offense and you're buying. Sometimes you're playing defense and you're stacking up cash. You might even do that with your job. Sometimes you have a job that's a 9 to 5 and you have a steady income, but you're stacking some cash to eventually purchase some real estate on the side, right? Or a small business or whatever it may be.
Right.
So I think you go through that flux throughout your lifetime. And if you even probably look back when you started your businesses, you did the same thing. You stored cash and you spent cash. You made assets.
I made the biggest offensive moves when everybody was afraid.
Yeah, exactly.
I stacked cash when cash was good. I made hay when the sun was shining. When COVID happened, everybody was afraid.
You were buying.
I was buying.
Yeah.
That's when I started buying, dude. I bought a bigger gym, tripled my business, bought another triplex, invested heavily in my properties. Now all of a sudden I look way smarter than I actually am. I'm not that smart.
Right.
It was just when everybody else is in a fervor and in playing offense, I'm like, I'm going to sit back. When everybody's afraid, that's when I started playing offense. And that's when I pushed my chips in. That's
when the markets do. So you just find those opportunities, I think. And as business goes on, if you get into it young enough, like you'll start to see some of those things. So I don't love predicting the future. I just say get good enough at whatever your craft is to know, hey, things have changed and I'm going to sit back and watch and then I'm going to either make a move or I'm going to draw back.
Definitely.
Right. So it's all just goes back to what we started this conversation on is like take action, learn your craft, build value in yourself. And like all of these things will kind of fall in line on whether to jump or to stay put.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Bro, I think that's an exclamation point.
Yeah,
it's a great place to wrap it up.
Yeah, this is a fun conversation.
But Chris, tell us about how we can get a hold of you if we want to get involved in real estate, if we want to get into CrossFit. How does somebody get a hold of Chris Ellson?
Yeah, I appreciate that. The gym is CrossFit Tantrum. We're in Export, which is right on Route 22 in Pennsylvania. So CrossFit Tantrum is the gym. For real estate, you can DM me on any social sites. You can look up the gym as well. Everything's just its name, CrossFit Tantrum, on all social sites. For real estate, I am chriselson.pgh.realtor on Instagram. You can DM me any questions you have about real estate, or look me up on Facebook, Chris Ellson. It's Christopher Ellson on Facebook. Those are my two main channels, and I'm sure you'll link them on the description.
Definitely.
Right?
If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me too.
I'll respond to you. I'll respond to you. I'll answer your questions.
All right, man. Well, let's wrap it up.
Appreciate it, man.
It's on 3. 1, 2, 3. Again, guys, this is a More Complete Beast podcast. We covered a lot of ground today. We covered social media. We covered real estate investing. We covered being a real estate agent. I know you learned something. Do me a favor, share this podcast and leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this podcast. I will see you in the next episode.